So while working for Mr. Flake Cartledge, I was what they call in the country a houseboy. Houseboy was a guy that, excuse me, that did whatever was around to be done. And my wages, I made $15 a month, which I thought was a lot of money. $15 a month. That's how I got my first guitar. People talk about people gave it to me and this and that. I didn't. Mr. Flake Cartledge bought it for me, took half of my salary one month, and took the other half the next month. So it cost me $15, a whole month's salary to get it. When I would finish my chores, I used to milk 20 cows a day, 10 in the morning, 10 at night. And when I would finish, they'd let me go to school. And that's how I got my schooling, and I would walk 5 miles to school. And I managed to make it through the 10th grade. And that was it. But if I had to tighten up, I could have did better. Of course, I could have done better, but without any supervision. They didn't make me go to school. There was no agencies around there that would take me away from where I was. Today, if you live in the city, it's possible that some of the agencies will get you and place you here, place you. Not then, not there. But now, there were people in the area, in the community, it was sort of like a village, that will tighten you up if you got out of line. Any of them could and would. So I learned at an early age, you try to stay in line. You do what society expects you to do. And that's how I grew up. I'd go to town on Saturday after I get through my tractor, sit on the street corners with my little guitar. I had a little red Stella guitar, and I'd play. And I'd sing, starting with gospel all the time. Sing me a gospel song, and people would, and I guess I was kind of smart in a way, because I knew where the white people passed and the black people passed. So I sit right at that corner. Well, the white folks had to pass me going this way and that way, and the black folks passed me going this way and that way. So some of all would stop, listen to me, because I guess I made enough noise. I had my big hat sitting down there, a bucket or something, for them to put tips in. And people that would ask me to play or request a song, when I finished playing it, if it was a gospel song, they would pat me on the head and the shoulders, and they would applaud me. Boy, that was nice. Keep it up. You're going to be good one day. But they didn't put nothing in the hat. But people would ask me to play a blues, would always put something in the hat. Now you know I'm a blues singer. That's how it started. I happen to think that the Great Spirit God made us all, put us all here for a reason, and all of us have something to do. And I think we have, it's a word I used to hear a lot called your brother's keeper, so I believe that I am my brother's keeper. So I think that there's a place for playing the guitar. There's a place for singing the blues. I'm harming nobody. People used to use the word quite often. It was a word, I guess it came from the early slaves. When a person sang blues, as I do or did, they called it singing them old reels. Now, I haven't found out yet what that meant, the reels. But I do know what they meant when they said the devil's music. But I started thinking to myself, and I still do, they don't equate a bus driver or a truck driver or a guy plowing the mules with working for the devil. Why do my singing and my playing have to be working for the devil? I tell stories like other people do in song. So I started thinking, you know, maybe they got something for themselves, but I don't see where I'm doing anything wrong to anyone. So why shouldn't I? And I started to work on it. I had sang with this group. I sang with two groups. First one was called the Elkhorn like an elk's horn, Jubilee Singers. That's where I started in Kilmichael. And I thought it was pretty good. But then when I moved to the Delta, that broke up the group. And I started to sing with another group called the St. John Gospel Singers. And I would usually sing as a lead singer, and I had started to play the guitar pretty good. So we was one of the few groups, gospel groups, that used the guitar. And I thought we was good because we had sang on programs with, some of the great gospel singers. We was like an opening act, open shows for them, and I personally thought we was pretty good. And we would work our crops each year, and come harvest time, we talked about leaving and going someplace to record because there was no recording studios in the area. So we would have had to go to Greenwood, Greenville, or to Memphis. And I thought Memphis would be the best because I'd heard so much about Memphis and the things they was doing there. Each year for about 3 or 4 years, we would talk about it, the guys and I. And every year one would say, well, man, I didn't make but 2-3 bales of cotton. I don't have any money. I can't leave now. So finally one day I said, well, I'm going to leave. And that's how I did it. I left and went to Memphis. Not like some of the blues singers. I didn't go to some of the other cities. I went to Memphis. But going to Memphis then was like a few years ago going to London or Japan or somewhere. Memphis seemed to be far, only 100 and some miles, but so far from where I was. The buildings and everything, there were big hotels and much going on. And there was a nice recording studio. A fellow named Sam Phillips had a nice studio. I had never been in a recording studio. At that time, we didn't have stereo. Everything was mono. I went in and I looked around, but I didn't know the difference between mono and stereo or anything else. But I did know that he had all of the mics on one line. Let's say 5 of us are playing and one break a string, we all got to go back and do it again. That's the way it was when I first started recording. And I remember that my aunt, a great aunt, when I was about 6, 7, used to let me play a Victrola, we called it Victrola, or anyway, it was a turntable, and you wind it up, and it would play a 78 record. But I did see some records prior to that was round like remind me of a cylinder in a car, and you'd slip a sleeve over it, and the sleeve was the record, a recording. And the thing that turned it, for example, like a turntable like we know of today, turns around and around and around. But this would turn around like that, and the record would play from here that way, across that way. Didn't see too much of that. I guess it was a lot of trouble. But later on, that was interesting to me, very interesting. And that's why I went to Memphis. I wanted to record. Well, I thought before I left home that I was really good. Oh, man, I could really sing, play the guitar. I thought I was really good. When I got to Memphis and went down to Handers Park, at the time I think it was called Beale Street Park, and heard those people out there, it was like a community college on the streets. I found out then that I wasn't so good as a singer. Oh, I thought I could sing, but nothing compared to what I thought before I got there and heard these other people sing. I saw people dancing, and I can't even hardly walk. I ain't never been able to dance in my life. Because when the guys was dancing with the girls and when I was dun-dun-dun-dun-dun-dun, and I used too much time at doing that because if I had got a teacher, if I had a teacher in the area or somebody that could have taught me, could have been, but I never found anybody. So I got my books from Sears Roebuck. I'd write and order me books. There was a guy called Nick Maniloff. Nick Maniloff had books guitar instruction books in the Sears Roebuck catalog, big one like that. I would order those books, and I studied them religiously. And that's how I learned to put my fingers on, learn how to tune the guitar, and learn my first bit of learning how to read music. I'm a blues singer, a blues musician, but I can read music, not fast, but I do. And I learned to even write a little bit. Now with my computer, I can write a little better. And I believed in myself. And that was the one thing I think that made me more confident in myself. This is going to probably sound funny to you, but I didn't think I was any different from anyone else other than I was a black kid instead of being a white kid. And it was a segregated society. We walked to school. The white kids had a school bus. And I was crazy about Roy Rogers. I like William Elliott. We call him Wild Bill. Never did think I'm being white. They was cowboys, my heroes. I think trying to answer your question, I had never experienced the North. I didn't know anything about the North. I didn't know anything about any other society other than what we lived in. So to answer your question, truthfully, it's all right with me. Just that some people had and some had not. And I wished I could have been one of those that had. Now, that's the truth. Well, I guess I was an average Afro-American boy, or American boy, really. I used to hunt, fish, played, I shoot marbles, was never good at any of it. The school I went to, we didn't have a football team or basketball team. We played something called base, it was similar to football with tackling and all that, but you didn't carry a ball. In other words, whoever could catch you and touch you, you put you in prison, as we called it. And it was sort of a funny game when I think about it now. But I think it's something like you never miss what you've never had. I never had any other life. I didn't know any other life. I knew that if I went to town on a Saturday, which I did, and there was two fountains, one said black, one said white, I didn't think other than that if you want to stay out of trouble, leave the white one alone. I also noticed that when I went to the restrooms, there was one that said white men, white ladies, and colored. That's all I knew. I grew up with it. It wasn't like somebody just threw me down there and said, you don't bother that. But I was taught that in my early life. My family would always say, because there was people being lynched around me. I haven't seen people be lynched, but I've seen them after they was. And I was told by some of the elders that, unless you do something, this can happen to you or that can happen to you. You don't bother the white ladies, you don't do this, you don't do that. And I learned that at an early age, and to me, it was just part of my training. I think this is why black people never did resist for such a long, long time, because if there's any such thing as being brainwashed, I was brainwashed, but it didn't bother me. I've noticed now since I've got to be a man, I've known of certain things. I remember once that a lady was kidnapped and took away, and finally she helped the people rob a bank or something, all that. She had been brainwashed. I was the same, and I didn't know the difference until people started to tell me, and I started hear about the North, and I started to hear past what they call the Mason-Dixon line. There you can do this or you can do that, and, just as a person. Well, after I got, say, in my teens, I started to realize that. I started to notice that some of the people lived. Chicago was a big name. We heard about New York. We heard about Los Angeles. We heard about but Chicago seemed to be the place you could go and get your nice car. You could live anywhere you want. And you could marry anybody you want. You could date anybody. I started to think about it a little. I'd see people then that had lived up there, and they'd come down, and they would be dressed nicely, and I still had on my overalls. See, overalls was a thing of wear that we had, and you wore them every day. Every day. You had overalls on. Overalls is jeans with a bib, to me. Well, I'd wear them all the week. On Friday night, wash them and dry them and iron them on Saturday morning and wear them to church on Sunday. That's why today I say to myself, I love to see the young people wear comfortable things. I have some jeans at the house that I wear them at the house. But I swore if God let me live, there's 2-3 things I would never do again. Wear overalls. I would always have me enough heat if I needed it, and food that I like to eat. Those 3 things I swore to myself. If God let me get to be grown, these 3 things I'm going to have. And I didn't get to be this big for nothing, so you can tell I've had food I like to eat. And at my house, I live in Las Vegas, and the temperature gets to be 110, 15 sometimes. And I rarely have the air conditioner above 75. That's generally my temperature that I like. And I still like those old fans, them old fans that blow the air. I like those. And give you guys the air conditioners. I haven't. I have central heating, I think is what they call it. Getting up in the morning, going to the fields. I never did like that. I'm a farmer at heart. I love farming. I think it's a great thing. Producing food and seeing the trees grow, the grass and everything else. It's great after you once get out there, but getting up that morning, to get up to go out and do it was hard. In Mississippi and the Delta, they used to have something called frost. They even give the frost a name. They call it Jack Frost. It would be cold in the morning. I never have liked a lot of cold. I see why I'm not white, because I could not stand the cold. I walk around now, I see people, especially white people, in their shirt sleeves, and I have on something heavy and still be cold. I get on the airplane and freeze. I used to think, oh, well, this is nice. The stewardess, come up, male or female. May I take your jacket? Yes, please. And then I'd freeze and go back and ask for it back. So I learned quite a few years ago, do not take off my jacket. Take off my overcoat, but never my jacket, because you freeze. Another place you go and you freeze is a casino. You go in a casino and they always keep it freezing. I don't see how people can enjoy staying in there. So it was always something that bothered me, and it still do. Today I'm 78 years old and still cold-blooded, I guess. Reptiles have nothing on me when the air conditioner. I don't want to, bust nobody's balloon, but they could have kept the air conditioner as far as I'm concerned. I did for about a year go to a large school in a place called Lexington, Mississippi, but my early schooling, and most of it was in a place called Kilmichael, Mississippi, just outside of Kilmichael, about 8-9 miles maybe. And my professor was a guy called Luther H. Henson, whom I love today. I truly believe that he was one of the few people that was able to get through this very thick skull of mine. Because things he told us then was long before we ever even heard of a Dr. King, long before we ever heard of integration, anything of that sort. He said, one day you won't have to walk to school. We had to walk 5 miles to school. One day you won't have to walk to school. One day there'll be a central school, he would say sometimes. And everybody will go to that school. Someday nobody will look at you and think of you as a country boy or this if you don't act like that. They would judge you by your deeds. That was his words. Whatever you do, however you do it, will follow you the rest of your life. And another thing he used to tell us, because we are sometimes, I think, a little hard-headed, he said, you have one body. Your body is your house. I can hear him saying it now. If you take care of your house, you can live in it a long time. But if you don't take care of it, meaning if you go out and you do things bad, like if you drink liquor, if you smoke, if you do this, you do that, you're going to hurt your house. Your house won't be able to last too long. And you know, I started to smoke when I was 13. And after a while, I stopped. I started to drink. And after a while, I stopped. Today, I can still hear him. He's been dead now a few years. He lived till he was about 102 years old. If I make 100, I'll be lucky. But that's the way I was as a kid, and that's the way I felt as a kid. I felt that I've never had a lot of friends like a lot of people, but I had a lot of acquaintances. I enjoyed going to school. I wasn't a very good student, but loved to look at the girls. I learned that early. That's the name of I think that's my life story, is loving to look at the girls, because I think God, creation of the ladies is the greatest creation ever. But we had one room where we sit at, and one teacher. And I guess it was about 40 or 50 of us, and that was the most of my schooling there at that particular school. It was a lady that sat in front of me. Oh, I guess she was about 8 or 9, so was I. But she was fully developed, seemingly, as a woman, heavy breasts and everything. And about once or twice every month, we sit on pews. We didn't have chairs like what we're sitting in. And about once or twice every month, I'd get that urge, because I sit behind her all the time, to just reach over and grab her. And whenever I'd reach over and grab her, my professor he was sort of on a little platform like where he sit at while we were studying. And he kept something called Piss-Elm switch. Ever hear of an elm tree? An elm tree has limbs that grow very long, and they don't break easy. And the people used to take them, it was just like a whip. You would almost swear it was a whip. And they would sort of put them in the heater. We had a heater. We didn't have central heat or anything. And they sort of burn it a little bit. When they burn it, it seemed to me the bark on the side of it was like leather. So when I'd get that urge and reach over to hug the girl, I don't know why. Yes, I do. We won't talk about that. But I would grab. She was just pretty to me. And the minute I would grab her, she'd bite like that. And when she'd bite, he'd hit. So after I sit up there for a while and get over that terrible pain, he would start to talk with us, and it didn't seem to bother him that he had already, you know. But then when he would talk to me, for some reason I understood him very well. I really wanted to be a gospel singer. That's what I wanted to be. This professor had a nephew that was a popular musician that played with a guy called Buddy Johnson. So when we would talk about music, he would say to me, "You can do it if you want to. You can play music, you can preach, you can do whatever you want to do. But you got to want to. And you need a good education. You need to learn to do this." He would say, we live on a plantation. We're in the country. And most people will put you down a little bit because you live in the country. And it's true, because when we'd go to town, people would say, "Here come them country people." But we did just the opposite. They're the old city folks, you know. My mother would take me to church, and this preacher in the church was named Reverend Archie Fair, we called him. Archie Fair was his name. And he played guitar in the church. So I wanted to be like him. And I never really wanted to be a preacher, but I wanted to be a gospel singer. But my family thought that if I kept things up, kept going, one day I would be a preacher. Because I ain't dead yet, so I don't think it's too late, but I've enjoyed doing what I'm doing for so long now. My mom died when I was 9. I lived alone from the time I was 9 until I was 14 because my mom and my dad was divorced from the time I was 5. And my mother had took me from the Delta back up in the hills up to Kilmichael, where we were talking about. Her people was from that area, and my dad was an orphan and had been raised by some guardians in Itta Bena, Mississippi, near Brickclare, a place it's called. All this is in the area of Indianola, which is where I grew up knowing about. But I lived there after my mother died. As I said, when I was 9, she was 27. I didn't know what was wrong. My mother went blind. I could see the big blood clots in her eyes, and she couldn't see. But she would talk to me. I was the only child. And I liked working for the people that my mother worked for, the Cottage family. I liked them. While I'm talking about that, I'd like to mention that I have 3 people that I worked for growing up. The Cottage family was one of them, Mr. Flake Cottage, a man that I enjoy today, calling him Mr. Flake Cottage, because to me, he deserved it. I came to the Delta again, and this time on the plantation, I worked for a man called Mr. Barrett, Johnson Barrett. And finally to Memphis, where I met another person called Mr. Ferguson, Bert Ferguson. These 3 men have been in my life, and they still are. And I've said many times that if I could grow to be a man, I'd love to be like all 3 of them. Because to me, each one of them was fair, they was good, they didn't do things because they could do them. They wasn't like a tutor or a teacher, but the things they said to me was like that. No, I never dreamed of it. I never thought of it at the time. I used to think when I was young and on the plantation after I got to a place where I liked, see, my cousin and I used to pick cotton, and we used to think we was good. And I think kind of goes to show you how people can be. Whatever you do, you can become what you think great at it, you know. My cousin and I would go out singing, wouldn't get in until late. We'd sleep, and they'd have a hard time waking us up in the morning to go pick cotton. Now, if we don't pick well, my uncle and my aunt's gonna get, you know, they're not gonna be happy at all. But we got to the place where we thought we was great. We'd go out, I think most I ever picked was about 480 pounds a day. But my cousin was better. He would pick 500 and more. So we would pick a small bale of cotton every day. So they would let us sleep just a little bit longer, because they knew when we come out, we were going to beat everybody else anyway. Well, I used to think then that when I got older, being that preacher and what have you, I was going to have me a little farm, not a plantation, a little farm. I could picture seeing myself plowing my mule or on my tractor. Picture seeing a beautiful woman with my 2, 3 kids coming out bringing me some water to the farm where I'm working at. Don't want her to work. I want to work for her. I want her to come up and bring my little kids, bring me some water, a piece of pie or something. Those was my dreams, not this. Those was my dreams. But when this did start to happen, and when I started to feel for real that I could do what I was doing, the way the people treated me, I was sort of like a guest at someone's home. I don't want to do anything to make them not be happy that they have a guest, me. After the 10th grade, I guess, I started doing like most kids do, not paying much attention to homework. I started wanting to do other things. Then I really started to be what we call a regular hand on the plantation. And while I was up there in Mississippi, I keep using the word up there because the Delta is around Indianola, Greenwood, Greenville, and past Greenwood going east. You go into what we call the hills, and Kilmichael's up there. But I used to chop cotton. I did all these things when I was 7. I was considered a regular hand when I was 7 years old. I used to bale hay. I guess I did everything that, you know, farmers usually do, and they expected me, the men expected me to do what they did, and I did. And I started to do more of it after I dropped out of school because I made a little more money. And then finally I learned, I don't know, I was kind of into, today I guess you would say technology, because I learned to drive tractors, and I was pretty good. I'd never heard the word superstar, but when I think about it today, I was a superstar tractor driver. I loved it. I loved it for several reasons. On Mr. Johnson Barrett's plantation, we plowed the whole plantation. I haven't found out yet, I'm going to try to find out, how many acres of land that he cultivated or had to cultivate. I'll tell you, you could ride 30 or 40 minutes and you still would be on his plantation. I mean, doing 50, 60 miles an hour, so you can figure out how much land that was. But as a tractor driver, I was popular. Hey, the girls look at you. I made a lot of money. I've been crazy about girls all my life. That was my downfall, I guess. Still is. But I made a lot of money. My salary compared to everybody else was great. I made $22.50 a week when everybody else, you know, because I have chopped cotton for 75 cents a day. I've picked cotton for 35 cents a hundred. And when you driving a tractor, you're sitting up there, all you got to do is use your expertise to keep it straight, don't plow up the cotton, which I didn't do too often because Mr. Barrett wasn't a guy that would put up with it. So you slept very well at night. Come to do that every day. But however, my music and being a tractor driver seemed to make me popular with the people. When you get to be kind of popular with the people, I wasn't a bad guy. I've never been in trouble, never have. Got put in jail one night after I was a man, but I was speeding, and they caught me right down in Mississippi Delta, put me in jail. I'll never forget that. And for some reason, I thought about that every time I started to almost get in trouble, I didn't like that place. I think what I'm trying to say to you is out of all of the things that was happening to me, it was just normal to me. I had a good old friend that died not long ago. He said, B.B. King ain't no star. He's a moon. I doubt of him either. But no, I've worked very hard to try to make people like me. I've worked very hard. I'm kind of like the little dog that goes get the paper. He go get the paper and bring it back. You pat him on the head, say, nice doggy, nice doggy. He go back and get 2 next time. That's the way I am. And I try to do that even today. I try to be as nice as I know how to be. I love people. I'll tell you something I don't tell people often, but I believe all people are good. Sounds funny coming from a Mississippi boy, but it's the truth. I believe all people are good, just a few, very few, do bad things. And you know what I believe? If they could find a man like my teacher was, Luther H. Henson, I could listen to him, I could hear him. And I believe if those bad people could find someone, because there is someone out there, I believe, that they will listen to. I truly believe that. You're not going to believe what I'm about to tell you. I have stage fright today. 78 years now. I had a lot of confidence that I could do it. I hear Professor Luther Henson again saying, if you try and try and try hard. And I hear a word quite often people use, I don't know where it comes from, but if you try, nothing beats a failure but a try. And if you try and you don't make it, try and try again. And I believe that. I believe that today. I believe sometimes you may not make that mark that you was trying to get this time, but suppose you had ate too much, drink too much water, or whatever. It was too heavy. Try it the next time when you don't have so much food, when you haven't drank so much water. And that's, I think, the way I believe even now. Well, the blues have been put down. I had a cousin once named, he was the only person in our family that ever been popular as a blues singer. His name was Booker White. Booker never taught me to play. People say he did, but he haven't, or didn't rather. But it's one thing he did tell me that stays with me today. He said, if you're going to be a blues singer, a blues musician, always dress like you're going to the bank to try to borrow money. And I didn't quite get it, but what he meant, you don't go there slouchy and sloppy. Be at your best behavior and always try to be like that. And that stays with me today. Well, this is sort of long, but my impression of what I get from people when they talk about blues singers, they picture a big black guy like myself sitting on a stool, looking north, with a cigarette hanging on the east end of his lip, a guitar that's ragged laying across his lap, and a jug of corn liquor on his west side, and his pants split on the south side. You still with me? A cap with the bib, and the bib is kind of turned up and sort of to the east again, and he's looking north. That's my impression of what I feel that a lot of people think of the blues singer. So it's been my life always to show that there's a different blues singer, not just that one. But I've thought many times, if you're black and you're a blues singer, it's like being black twice. 2 times. I've always fought against that. Now, that's one thing I have tried to do. I have learned that blues singing is just like singing any other kind of song. You still try to tell a story. Your story may not be as, shall we say, some of the love songs that's written by a lot of the great singers, or great writers, I should say. But you have a soul, you have a heart, you have a feeling. And your music is life. Life as we've lived it in the past. Life as we're living it today. And life as I believe we'll live tomorrow. Because it has to do with people, places, and things. If it's a man, we think in terms of the lady, the opposite sex. If it's a woman, she thinks in terms of the man. But it's still love, even though we call it blues. And that's the myth is that everybody think it's all sad because it started from the slaves. That is a myth. Some of it is. But tell me what music doesn't have some sadness in it. And then I'll try to learn a little bit more about the blues. I think that I know my job pretty well. But I always think this way now. It's not false modesty or anything. I'm never any better than my last job. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? In other words, I don't always think that I've got it made and, hey, I'm B.B. King, so and so. Never that. Never that, because the people put you up there and they can cut you down like that. It's just like the great God, this great spirit. We live and we die. And I'm talking about if you die naturally, you never know when it's going to be. It can happen anytime. So I think in a way that we're here. I've heard people use the word on borrowed time, but I don't know about that. I don't think I borrowed it, but I think that I'm here and just as easy cannot be here. So I never think that I got it made. I've known people that had a little money and overnight something happened, insurance no good, and what little money had, bam, it's gone. I knew Count Basie. I knew Louis Armstrong. I knew Duke Ellington. I knew Benny Goodman. Those are just a few of the people that I tried to pattern my life after trying to be a musician. I still have that old code. Don't smoke, don't drink on the bandstand. Don't swear on the bandstand where I am. Never. The people are the most important things that we have. So you must treat them like who they are. And that's the way I've been all the time. No drugs, no liquor. Even when I was drinking, don't bring no liquor on the bandstand. Never. That's the way I've always been. I've had tragedies. I've had things that happen. I remember once, after I thought I was doing pretty good, this is sort of hard. I haven't talked about it a lot, but this is after I thought I was doing pretty good. I had bought an old bus. We called it Big Red. Bought that in 1955. Big Red, and the band would hop on that, and we was doing pretty good. We did, that year, I think we did 342 one-nighters. Well, people laugh at me because we did, but blues has never been a popular music like rock and roll or like jazz or anything. So I always use the word, we seem to be at the bottom of the totem pole all the time. But my guarantee, I believe, was about $250 a day, a night, and we needed the money. But young at that time, didn't pay much attention to what we were doing, no more than we were going places. Always felt, still do, that moving about will introduce us to the kind of music that we do. This is why I said a while ago about inviting somebody to come out and hear it. I don't usually do that. But I hope when they come, they're surprised. And they hear it, like it, and we'll come back again. Well, at that time then, we thought that it was a nice thing, a great thing to have a bus, and then the artist, me, with a band, and the band be in the bus, and I have my car when I want to have it out there. And you had to have a new car, and especially a Cadillac. You know, I tell everybody you're doing great when you didn't know what you was going to eat the next morning, but still, hey, man, you got to remember that the word is, look like what you ain't. People think you're doing well. They support you well. And that was our thing. So one particular day, I had played Monroe, Louisiana, on my way to Dallas. So I had gone to visit somebody. My bus left at the time they were supposed to. Later that evening, I came on my way to Dallas and found out that my bus had been involved in a wreck. It had ran head-on with a butane gas truck. It had burned the front end, the whole front end off of the bus. None of my people was killed or hurt, I should say, except the driver. He had broke his toe trying to get out of there. But a man had been killed in the accident, and another one had burned badly. I didn't see them. I wasn't there. I didn't know about it. And the same day, would you believe, during that time, the Senate was, I forget the word they're called, but when the big conglomerates and insurance companies, when the big ones they had started to tear them apart. If you know what I mean, I think they did it to AT&T and a few other companies. At that time, that very evening, I get a letter from my insurance company telling me that their insurance was terminated. That very day. And this is like on a Friday. So I got Saturday and Sunday, then come Monday before I can get more insurance. But I'm already in the bus now done burned up. A man has been killed. Like I said, I wasn't there to see it, but it still cost me. And they claimed there was a lady that caused the accident that was coming up to one of them Texas bridges. And in Texas, even then, they didn't have the superhighways like we have today. But they had the bridges leading up, something like this leading to the bridge. Instead of the highway being, you had balance on this side, something that if you hit it, you would skid back over this way or back this way, and it was raining. I hope do you understand what I'm trying to say? So the bus tried to miss this lady in the car, and it hit that balance. And when it did, that's when it bounced back right in the path of that oncoming butane gas truck. Hurt me so bad I didn't know what to do. But then they sued me. They didn't care anything about it. It was $1 million, $1 million. I had never even seen, I couldn't even spell a million. God, $1 million. That was one of those times when you talk about paying dues. It took me a few years to pay it, but they let me pay it out. But luckily the lady had good insurance and a great lawyer. So we were lucky to get a pretty good lawyer that worked with her lawyer, and they got it down to $1 million. They wanted much more. But we had to pay it off. That was my first setback. My audience, when I started to, I was with a small label, and to sell 100,000 copies of anything was a hit for them. So I got a telegram from my company that said that, B, you got a hit. I had recorded several things, and this one was called 3 O'Clock Blues. They said, you have a hit. So then the people in the area of Memphis, because I'd been on the radio, I was a disc jockey there from 49 to 55. You got a hit, they say. So I would go as far as I could go to get back to the radio station the next day. And when I learned about transcribing or recording your program earlier, they would let me do it sometime. And I was becoming very popular. But it was mostly Dan Black, because we were, remember, still behind the Mason and Dixon line, and the only people who were allowed to come and see me were black, and usually my audience was my age and older, but a young guy then. I was in my 20s. Then as I got older, so did my audience did, and they stopped coming, the black ones. Then long after that, I started hearing people talk about my guitar playing. I never heard it from the people that the journalist said, talked about it. I always would hear it from a journalist. Somebody said, so-and-so say you can really play. And then one day I was reading a magazine. At this time, the Beatles was the hottest group I ever heard of, and I guess anybody else. And I read where John Lennon was being interviewed, and the interviewer asked him what would he like to do, and he said, play guitar like B.B. King. I almost fell out of my chair just reading it. And I didn't believe it, but I had a producer at the time named Bill Simsick. Bill knew John. So one day, we was in New York recording, and John was in town, and he talked to Bill. And Bill said, you got a guy over here, he's real crazy about you. And told him who I was, and I spoke to him. I never seen him personally, but I talked to him for about 5 or 10 minutes. So, I don't know what the word would be, but just so happy to know there's a man that's most popular in the world that knows my name, not my music, just knows my name. I felt good. Now we started to pick up a different audience. Instead of the black audience that we had, we're now getting young white people. Now I'm traveling about. Now I'm going to San Francisco. I'm going to small places all over the United States. Then finally this agency that I mentioned to you earlier booked me at a place called the Fillmore West. Now, I'd played the Fillmore many times before when it was owned by another person. But this time when I get there, there are long-haired kids, kind of like Jesus Christ used to have, long hair. I ain't never seen people wear hair like that around me. I saw it in papers, books, and Bible. When I pulled up there, we still on this bus. This is before the accident, this Big Red, as we call it. Looked out there at the Fillmore where we used to go. And the stairway leading to the door. There was people sitting from here all the way across. And there was about 3 or 4 stairs that lead up to the door. The stairs was about as long as the average length of a regular car. And they body to body sitting there. So I told my road manager, I said, I think they made a mistake this time. I don't think we're supposed to go here. I said, the band and I are going to sit here. You go in there and find out what the mistake is. So my road manager went out and he found the promoter, who was Bill Graham, one of the greatest people I think I've met. And he came out and said, oh, no, Beats, that's the right place. I looked. I went to say, are you sure? He said, I'm the promoter. Come on in. I'm scared to get off the bus. Said, okay. So I followed him in. Now, as we went inside, and this may not seem like much to you, but I'm used to when you go in past people and they sit and body to body, they move way over and they're going to look at you and say, hey, man, watch it. Don't step on me. They didn't do any of that. They just sit there, and if the ones was having a conversation continued. They just lean over politely, say nothing. And here I am like this, scared as I could be. Ain't never played for nobody like this. Now, when we finally get through these people on the stairway, we get inside, there's no table, just a big ball room, bare. No tables, no chairs, nothing. People now are sitting body to body on the floor. So, my God, so I got to get past them, this way and that way. And finally, we got to the old dressing room that I had been used to going to. I looked at Bill and I said, Bill, I got to have a drink. He said, B, we don't sell liquor here. Don't care. I got to have a drink. He said, okay, I'll send out and get you one. He sent out and got me a half a pint of something, I don't know. But they brought it to me and I had a big belt of it. And I sit there reminding myself of how a cat would be if a dog was in the front of him. I'm scared to death. So he said, Bill said, well, I'll come back and get you when it's time to go on. I thanked him and sit there still, shaking a little bit. So when it was time for me to go on stage, came back and got me. And we got to wade back through these people again. But when we got to the stage, see, they don't know me by looking at me. They don't know what I look like. They just only know me by the music. He said, ladies and gentlemen, and everybody got very quiet, I bring you the chairman of the board, B.B. King. The best intro and the shortest I ever had in my life. And all of a sudden, they started to applaud, and they stood up, and they applauded, and I cried. Because I was starting to think how these people can be so good to me, and what the heck am I going to do for them? I ain't never played to no people like this. Well, I quite often perspire quite a bit. Perspiration is running all of them, but I was crying too. And I think I had about a 45-minute set. Do you know they stood up 2 or 3 times more? And that's the first time that I ever thought that I was doing pretty well. Not really made it, but I've gotten pretty close to the door. It was a breakthrough for me, and they didn't seem to look at me as B.B. King, the blues singer. It was B.B. King, the musician. They made me feel like I was somebody. I had never felt like that. Never. Oh, I had been treated nicely. Don't think I hadn't. I'm talking about pride of that. But this time, the way they treated me, made me think that I was like some of them other people I heard of. You know, like the big stars. They made me feel like that night. And then I'm standing up there crying because I'm so moved by what they're doing. And then I'm wondering what the heck am I going to do for them? There's so much to do, so much more to do, till even today. I think that I'm okay. I think I know my job. I said this earlier. I have had a lot of things happen to me which I'm grateful. I've met 4 sitting presidents. President Ford, President Bush Sr., President Clinton, and President George W. Bush, I think it is today. I know I call him young President Bush. Then I met the Pope, gave the Pope a guitar. But just recently, a month or so ago, I had a chance to do something I had never done. Oh, I forgot to mention that I met the Queen of England. Few words, you know, to the Queen, scared to death, because I didn't know the protocol, the etiquette and everything. Didn't want to do nothing wrong. But about a month ago, I met the King and Queen of Sweden. And they gave me something called the Polar Prize, and to me, that's the highlight of B.B. King's career. Now, I think what I'm trying to tell you, I've been grateful for even being awarded 6 honorary doctorate degrees. I've been honored at the Kennedy Center. All these things to me has been great, but it ain't something like you can put in your pocket and keep it. It was great. Oh, God, what a wonderful time. So glad it's over. When it's over. Do you understand what I'm trying to tell you? But glad to get it. But so, God, I prayed it was over. All of these things is important to me, yes. I'm so glad it happened, yes. But that was them. I'm meeting these people. That's not B.B. King. I'm meeting them. But they treated me nicely. They've given me honors and stuff. That still don't tell me that I've done anything. You don't understand what I'm trying to say. I hope you can. I am just trying to say to you that it means more to me than I know how to tell you, but it's me meeting you, meeting her, him. The honor is I'm being able to meet them. I think I would go back to what my teacher told me in a way, but quite differently I would say, get high off your music. Don't use drugs of any kind. Please don't smoke, because that'll mess up your vocal cords for your singing. Be a person. Just as you want to be loved, love them. Always respect the people that come to hear you play. Try your best to please these people. But then you got to live in the neighborhood. Try to be a good neighbor. Play your music. If you're a student, if you're going to college, major in music, minor in computers. So if your music don't work, you can still have a job. Lastly, you might become very good at what you do. A lot of people do, but everybody's not going to like it. So if you can't make a living at it, go back to your minor. That's what I would tell them.